Thank you very much, Chairman Shelby. Secretary Wilson, I would also like to echo what others have said here and thank you for your service to the nation and to the United States Air Force during your distinguished career. And I'd like to congratulate you on your upcoming career opportunity at UTEP. That's still staying close to New Mexico, so I'm sure you'll enjoy that. And we're going to miss your leadership at the Pentagon. Madam Secretary, as you're aware, an epidemic of PFAS contamination is infecting communities adjacent to Air Force bases all over the country, and I know the General is familiar with this too. Families, business owners, farmers, and service members who have suffered from exposure to these toxic chemicals in New Mexico deserve immediate relief, and the Air Force must take precautionary steps to prevent further dangers to public health. In response, myself, Senator Heinrich, and Representative Lujan are pressing the Environmental Protection Agency and the Department of Defense through the newly introduced legislation to coordinate closely with the state of New Mexico to move forward with remediation plans to clean up contaminated sites and take all necessary steps to prevent further risks to public health. We have made sure to keep the Air Force informed as we've worked on this issue. The Air Force has asserted that it does not have legal authority under the law to provide clean water or filtration for agriculture. Is that your understanding of current authority?
Yes, Senator Udall, that's correct. We have authority to provide clean water to people, but not for agricultural use under the current law.
And our bill provides that authority. It moves further than you believe you have authority for. Is the Air Force prepared to work with us to find a way to ensure that they have the authority?
Senator, we will work with you on that legislation, and also there's a very broad coalition of people concerned with this issue. And if I could, because it affects them, what we're talking about here is a chemical that was safe for its intended use at the time it was used. It's called PFAS and PFOA. It was used in firefighting foam, but it was by the Air Force. But at less than 3% of this chemical was sold to firefighting foam companies. It's used in wrappers on fast food. It's used for waterproofing on shoes. It's used in Teflon coating on pans. So it's used in a lot of different things, and it is now an emerging potential pollutant. And the Air Force leaned forward and identified, looked at all of our sites as to where it might be, and began the process of assessing whether there was any impact to the water and taking mitigating actions. So I think all the services really leaned forward and did that, and I think it was the responsible thing to do. But we also need to recognize this is a national issue and problem, and probably is going to involve not just the EPA and Department of Defense, but agriculture, health and human services. This is a major issue for the country, of which the Air Force is just one small piece.
Yeah, and just to elaborate on that, I mean, this is a toxic chemical, and what happened in New Mexico near Cannon is with the firefighting activities, the PFAS chemical with large quantities of this has polluted the aquifer. It's poisoned people. I have a farmer that's gone and taken specifically from his blood and from the wife of his blood to see they have very high levels of PFAS in their blood. He's about ready to kill 4,000 cows because he has no way through filtration, which I asked you about. The cows, he cannot sell them. It could impact an even larger area, which is all dairy farmers. So we're at the point of the spear on this. I mean, New Mexico and this base, you've poisoned people, you've poisoned agriculture, you've poisoned the aquifer, and you've poisoned the feed that's raised for the farmers also has PFAS. So we would hope that you would be very, very aggressive about dealing with this issue. We've been very frustrated with dealing with the Air Force on this because you say you had wanted to have the authority. We gave you legislation on November 27th. Your response, which I'd ask that response be put in the record, consent to do that, Mr. Chairman? Response be put in the record.
Without objection.
You basically responded with something that wasn't very helpful and basically says we don't want to have the authority to do that. We sent revisions back to you on February 14th, and so March the 6th we introduced our bill. So our sense is the Air Force is not moving aggressively like it should be moving. And I'd like to know whether you believe that you're going to take the authority and get the bull by the horns. And you know, you say here you want to have authority. Well, support the bill. Will you support our bill? Tell me today, will you support our bill so that we can move forward and correct these things? General, why don't you start?
Senator, we have dozens of sites around the country where this is an issue. It is a particular issue at Cannon where we not only, we have the authority to provide clean water immediately and also prevent any additional damage to the aquifer when it has to do with people. We do not have the authority to deal with agriculture. To his credit, our Assistant Secretary for Installations and Environment has led the effort in the executive branch to engage the Secretary of Agriculture, the EPA, and Health and Human Services to see whether they have authorities to be able to deal with the agriculture issues. And as you know, and all of us have been concerned and frustrated by this, that there is no standard for agriculture as well. So it's an extremely difficult situation. We are doing the best we can with the authorities that we have, but it is a national problem. And there is a coalition of members, some of whom are on this committee as well, who are facing this issue.
Well, have you all reviewed our legislation, and will you support it?
Senator, I have not seen your draft legislation.
Okay. Well, we've been sharing it with you over the course of 3 months, and I think you knew this was what I was going to ask about. So I'm very disappointed as to where we are today, and we can put it in all sorts of fancy words, but the reality is of this one farmer and many farmers that are in the region is the Air Force has poisoned his family. They poisoned his livestock, they poisoned his water, and they poisoned his crops. And we would expect under those circumstances that the Air Force be very aggressive about supporting legislation and doing all you can to make sure this contamination doesn't spread further and to take care and make the people whole that have been hurt already. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.